Delhi to MIT, and what motivated you to pursue research abroad?
Sure. So firstly, thanks a lot for having me here. I am Sharut. I am a fourth year PhD student at MIT. And I did my undergrad back at IIT Delhi and I finished in 2022. So the journey overall has been pretty incredible. Moving out from India to a completely different country, living with new people, trying to navigate how to do research, how to live more than that, because you have to take care of all the expenses, your whole lifestyle apart from work. I think it's been a totally new journey on that front. What motivated me specifically were my research experiences that I had at IIT Delhi. So when I joined my undergrad, I had no plans to pursue higher education. My plan was just to like graduate, probably in get one of the jobs, somewhere in India. But in towards the end of my second year, I did an internship in India, Paris, where I was working on machine learning for forecasting traffic accidents. That was the beginning of my journey in machine learning. And apart from that, I worked with some professors at IIT Delhi too on machine learning for breast cancer detection, and I used some other ML tools for developing some software systems for Nokia as well. I think the major shift came when I did another internship, which was at Harvard University. Um, so it was majorly for machine learning tools and deep learning when it comes to quantitative reasoning, as well as medical imaging. So it was the time when COVID hit in like 2020, and I was here in Boston doing my internship. So it was really interesting because the tools that we were developing, we started developing them for COVID-19 specifically. And we were developing softwares that were being deployed right here in the Mass General Hospital, which is one of the biggest hospitals in the whole of the world. So we were developing tools that were being used directly in front of me, and being applied to patients, and they were helping doctors do the prognosis faster. So I think seeing this transition where you can see your research and you can see that your research can come to life so fast and can create so much impact. That was the time when I was like, maybe PhD or research as a career trajectory could be a great option. And that's where exactly the transition happened, and I decided to do a PhD. So towards the end of my undergrad, in the last year, I applied for different PhD schools, and landed here. Yeah.
That's really inspiring. I think this will be very helpful for many of our attendees. So my next question is, what initially sparked your interest during your undergraduate time for research?
Yeah, so to be honest, like being brutally honest, I don't think there was anything specific that sparked my interest to begin doing research, because as an undergrad student, I think most of you already know there are some undergrad projects that students have to do, and in general taking these experiences can be really good for the CV or the resume. So I remember when I started doing research or like tried doing a project with a professor, that was in my second year, and the whole aim that I went and the whole motivation I had to even begin that was just to pump up my CV and to like start a project with a professor. But I think it was so interesting that I kept going. I explored a bunch of other topics too. I did a project in like cryptography, and some other in core mathematics. But I think after the first project, I was just so interested in machine learning that I kept pursuing it one after the other. I think it was the sheer interest after a point, and also the impact I could see that these tools could create. And I think it's really interesting that what machine learning was then versus where it is now, like deep learning and AI and the boom and how it's impacting the society. It seems crazy that it seems going the same path, and it might create even more exponential trends in terms of the impact.
Yes. Since many students here are interested in applying in graduate schools, so can you walk us through the application process for applying to PhD programs like universities, the MIT?
Sure. So I mostly applied to American universities. I had only one other school which I applied to outside US, which was EPFL in Switzerland. So most schools in US have an application fee, typically in the range of like $100 to $150 per application. So because of that, you don't apply to a lot of schools, but you also have like a safe bet so that you can get in at least some of the schools that you really want to. So typically, people go for the number of applications in the range of around 6 schools to like 15 schools, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on how confident you feel about your application. The deadlines are usually in December of the previous year. So if you want to start your PhD next year, the deadline would be December of the previous year. The application process typically consists of your statement of purpose, which is the most important one out of like the three components that are there. So in the statement of purpose, the whole point is so you have your resume, which already says whatever you have worked on, what's your experience, and so on. So the point of the statement of the purpose is to tell more about why you are interested in what you're doing, and how your journey as a kid and up to in your undergrad, or like whatever your experiences have been, they have shaped you and sparked your interest in research. And why do you want to do a PhD? So like you should use your statement of purpose to be very eloquent and very descriptive about your passions and why you're interested, and what have you learned from your experiences in the past that have shaped your decision to do a PhD. So that's the first thing, which is statement of purpose. Then we have letters of recommendation, which is also really, really important. So typically people use one letter of recommendation from the host university, so like one from IIT Kanpur, say, and two others from some other people that they have worked with. They could be from your same school, like from IIT Kanpur, but they could be from outside as well. So I think these matter a lot because uh, the people who write your letters, if they are very descriptive in what they write about you, for instance, if they write very cleanly about what has their interaction been with you, or like what are the skills that they saw when you were interacting with them, rather than very high level details, that this student has this high GPA, this person is really good in academics, which is like at a very high level. So I think it really helps if the letters of recommendations can be very precise and very granular, and can talk in more detail about the characteristics of the individual that make them a really good researcher. So I think that really helps. So on that front, it's usually really nice if your letter writers can either share their letters with you, or you can draft the letters for them. So in my case, what happened was two of my professors, they were quite busy, so they just asked me to write the letters, and then they would correct the letters and just like sign it off and submit it on my behalf. So that is also a good part, because then you can write the letters yourself, so you know how granular you can go, and you can spend more effort than what a general letter writer would have done. So letters are really, really important. Then we have personal statement, which is also something that only some schools. It's less academic than the statement of the purpose, but it's again more about your journey and what inspired you as a kid and what inspires you even now to pursue what you're doing. Statement of purpose is supposed to be more about your academic journey, but this could be more about your social journey or more about your experiences, say being being a public speaker, or being in say NSS, or like whatever activities a person has undertook. So that's the personal statement about like what they have learned from that experience and what they want to do with that experience. So these are the major three components of any application. Apart from that, there would be the tests. So there's GRE and TOEFL. GRE is optional at a lot of universities, but TOEFL is mostly mandatory. So with GRE, the scores. So if you're applying for a PhD versus if you're applying for a master's, the score cutoffs for the two can be very different. If you're applying for a PhD, these scores do not matter as such, but some of the top schools might have some cutoffs on them. For example, for what I remember for GRE, I think it was really good if you could score above 325 or 320, I think, out of 340 back at the time I applied in 2022. For TOEFL, it was out of 120, and any score above like 112 was good enough. So I think if you're applying for PhD and if you're able to score higher than these thresholds or whatever other thresholds this year, you're pretty sorted, and the schools would mostly value your statement of purpose and your recommendation letters on top of anything else. So it doesn't matter even if you scored like 335 out of 314 GRE versus 325. At the end of the day, what will be detrimental to your admission to a school would be your SOP and your recommendation letters. So I think that's mostly about the process. Apart from that, another thing I would like to mention is for European school, most of them do not have an application fee, unlike the schools in America. So I applied to EPFL and they didn't have any application fee there. And I know some other universities like ETH Zurich or some in Paris also do not have them. So it's worth checking those options out too. And just one other quick suggestion would be uh, working a lot on your statement of purpose by sharing it with different mentors or different people who can give you different perspectives on how it reads to them and how they feel about it. So when I applied for my PhD, I remember the final application I went with that I submitted to all of these schools. It was the 12th draft of my statement of purpose, and each draft I sent it to like multiple people, got their feedback, rewrote it, and so on. So you need to start early. You can't, if the deadlines are in December, I don't think you can do it if you start in November. So you need to start at least a few months before, say sometime in July or August, so that you can prepare your SOP, keep refining it. At the same time, give your tests, give GRE and TOEFL, so that you have all the documents well in time before the application, and it's not that rushed.
I think this information was quite helpful. So, I would like to ask a broader question like, how should a student decide whether research is the right career path for them or not?
Yeah, I think that's a very tricky and a very good question. I would say the most helpful thing is getting as much experience as possible. As an undergraduate student, the best you can do is just do some projects with some professors, or at different places. You can try some research institutions. Like at least in my undergrad, what people used to do used to be in second year. After second year, they used to do these research internships or foreign internships where they tried to get that experience in 3 months. And apart from that, they did some projects under different faculty at the undergrad institution. I do know other people as well who do think that they like research, but they're not confident enough that they can do a PhD, because PhD is very different than the research experience that you also might get in an undergrad. Because typically, when you are an undergrad student, you're working with someone senior. For instance, you might be working with another postdoc or a PhD student or a master student or directly with a professor. So a lot of times the work that you do is is a part of research, is something that someone else instructs you to do. For example, a PhD student might be telling you that, run this experiment, or now let's do this, and so on. But as a PhD student, that's exactly the thing that you have to come up yourself. Like, you need to decide what projects to work on. You should decide what should be the next steps. Of course, a faculty member like your advisor will be there to help you, but that also varies a lot with like the conditions you're in. There are some faculty members which are very hands off, and they might not be as involved in the projects that a PhD is doing. So, as a PhD student, I think it's very important to know how to do independent research, which is something that you might not get a flavor of as an undergrad student. So, what typically helps is doing these research positions after undergrad. So there is a pre-doc program both at Google and Microsoft that I know some of my friends went to after undergrad. So the point of this program is just that, for 2 years, you'll be spending time at these two companies, working with people doing research, publishing papers, and getting a sense of how research happens. So publishing papers also not only helps with your PhD profile, because now you have more papers that you can show for yourself, but also gives you more of a sense of, is research something that you can do and you want to do. So that is like another path that I've seen people take. Apart from that, I've also seen people go for like opportunities in tech jobs. For instance, I know some friends from who went after undergrad directly to Samsung, say Seoul. But after like 3-4 years, they came back and started doing a PhD, or like started as a Google pre-doc and then went for a PhD. So I think it depends on where you are. If you directly want to go after the undergrad, so something that helps a lot is experience during the undergrad or these pre-doc programs after that. And then I guess it depends on where you are in the journey. For instance, where you are in your tech job, or where you are in whatever job you're in, and what kind of goals do you have for yourself.
That was a very nice perspective. So, can you tell us about studying in the US specifically? Like, what are the advantages of pursuing graduate studies in US?
Yes, for sure. So I think a lot of them. The first and the foremost is the fact that these universities, there's a reason that they are ranked so high when it comes to QS rankings or like the world rankings. So you meet when I came to MIT, I think I had a solid imposter syndrome, to be honest, because you meet so many cracked people who are doing so well. You'll meet it's just like IIT, but like at a world level, I'll say. IIT is a place where you feel like, you have entered this whole new universe of the smartest people of the whole of the country. So when you go to these top schools in US, you'll see, or like anywhere else in the world, you'll see that, you're meeting all these brightest minds and smartest people all across the world. So meeting them, interacting with them, it's a whole new experience, not just in terms of learning because they are from different cultures, but also learning because they are really smart, and you can like exchange that information, and you can really learn from one another and become better. So I think that for me was the biggest advantage of being at MIT, like being alongside those people, trying to push myself more and more, just because I was surrounded by these people, which also happened at IIT, but it was at an exponential scale when I joined MIT. Um, yes. So apart from that, I would say the reason I did not go to Europe and went to US was also because of my style and my frequency in terms of the work-life balance. So typically in European schools, um, people value their life outside work a lot more than it is done in India or in US. So the style that I have in terms of the kind of work-life balance I maintain, it was quite resonant with the style in US or in India than in Europe. So I did want to grind for the first few years of my PhD, and I didn't want to work hard. And I did want to spend that time, like working on my PhD and not like thinking too much about, my life and spending holidays and things like this. So I think that's another factor that people consider when joining Europe versus US. Then, in terms of post PhD opportunities. I think if you want to start a startup, like whether you want to go into entrepreneurship or whether you want to join an industry, like a tech industry, say Google DeepMind, OpenAI, or Anthropic, or whether you want to even take an academic route, I think US positions you really well compared to the rest of the parts of the world. In that sense, because there are tremendous opportunities both in terms of industries. They have a lot of headquarters here in California, especially for the tech companies. Then even in terms of academic positions, if you want to become a faculty member, there are a lot of schools, lot more schools in US, um, and they hire a lot more as well. So you get those opportunities too. And entrepreneurship again, you have a lot more opportunities here. There are definitely some places in Europe where you might be able to get close to what things are in the US. For instance, more recently in Paris, there have been a lot more growth in terms of entrepreneurship, and new companies in AI have been coming up, like Mistral is a company. It started in Paris because Meta Paris has very good base there, and the founders of Mistral were actually employees at Meta, and they left the company to start this company. So I think you can get something close to what you have in the US in terms of that culture, but only in very specific parts of Europe. So I think that was another big decision why I chose US compared to going to Europe. Um, I do see why some people might also prefer Europe because it's also closer to India. And if people want to visit home more often, definitely US is much farther away. I do feel that now as well, which is when I have to visit home, it takes me 20 plus hours to take a flight and come back home, while it might have been just 7 hours or 10 hours to visit from Europe. So that's another factor that doesn't seem as important when you're thinking about applying, but I think it can become decently important after a few years. Um, so that is another point. Yeah, I think that's about it that comes to my head right now. Yeah.
You pointed out very good points. So, uh, what about the financial aspects? Could you tell us a little about PhD programs in the US? Are they funded or like?
Yeah, so all the PhD programs, and or at least most of them, are funded at least up to some years. For example, at MIT, you have guaranteed funding for first year, and after that, your professor provides you funds. So it's a standard stipend amount that is paid to all the students. It depends on which program you are in. For example, I'm in EECS, which is Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. So the stipend that I receive will be different from the stipend that my other friends, say in chemical department or in nuclear engineering, would receive. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, it is so in the first year you don't even have to worry about whether you have funding from any other sources, because the department would pay for you at MIT. After that, you need to find a faculty member who's going to be your PhD advisor. People typically find that in their first year as well, or like even before joining MIT. So as soon as you have your principal advisor or your PhD advisor, they fund you. So they pay the same amount that the department was paying you with, but now the money just comes from the professor and not the department. So it can happen, and it did happen with some of my friends that I know, because more recently there were some cuts in the grants in the US, specifically when it comes to biology, and some more governmental funds. So I do know some professors, they were facing issues with funding, and they were not able to fund their students a lot more. So in that case, I think a PhD student has this good backup option, which is they can always TA, which is become a teaching assistant for a course. So at MIT specifically, if you become a teaching assistant for a course, you get the same stipend again. But now again, because you are a teaching assistant, so the professor who's teaching that course will be paying you that money. So, just in case your professor, your PhD advisor runs out of funding, there is always this backup to become a teaching assistant to get your funding. I didn't have to do it for whatever time I have been here, like the last 4 years, but I do know some people who have TA'd or like become a teaching assistant like twice in their whole PhD. There are some downfalls to becoming a teaching assistant, because you would rather spend all the time that you have in your PhD or on some other things that you might be more passionate about than teaching a course. You might feel that you already have a lot of workload, and you might not have the time to teach a course, but that might be something that you have to do just in case your professor runs out of funds. Um, so this is specific to MIT, but I do know that across all schools, uh, your professor definitely funds you. This is like consistent across all the schools, whether they are in US or in Europe. And teaching assistant is always an option, just in case your professor runs out of funding. In some schools, the PhD is fully sponsored for some X years too. So in MIT, that's only 1 year. But for instance, I think in Princeton or in University of Washington, your PhD can be funded for 3 to 4 years at start. So these are some fellowship opportunities that you don't directly apply for them, but when you apply to a school, they can consider you for some fellowship opportunities. So if they find your application really impactful and really interesting, they might directly, ask you that, congratulations, we'll be more than happy to offer you an acceptance in the school, but also fund you, also have like guaranteed funding for you for 4 years. I think that really helps, because for 4 years now, you don't even have to worry about who you work with. You can work with your professor, of course. You have to have a PhD advisor, but you can keep collaborating with other people. So your professor doesn't have as much say in your PhD, and you can make more of your decisions if your funding is fully sorted. Um, but yeah, that's more about it. But in general, I don't think PhD students really worry about the funding, but because like across all universities, it is funded, and you get funding either from the professor or from the department or from teaching assistantship. This is a bit different than masters, where in most places, especially in private institutions, you have to pay a lot more money. You can offset that money by doing again teaching assistantships, because you can get some stipend out of it. But in most cases, you have to pay the tuition. In PhDs, you don't have to pay any tuition. You don't have to pay for health insurance, and you get stipend on top of it.
That's amazing. So, after completing a PhD, what kind of career opportunities open up for the PhD graduates in academia and
So,
industry?
yeah, I think it depends a lot on which area you're doing your PhD into. For instance, my major is in machine learning and artificial intelligence right now, and the kind of opportunities are very varied. Like at this point, I could go for starting my own startup and like using the people around me at MIT and like joining hands with them and like starting a company altogether, which is something that is happening a lot these days, especially in the field I am in, that is in machine learning. um, the second opportunity is going into like industries. For instance, I have some internship experiences at different tech companies like Google and Meta. Following PhD, I could decide to go into a full-time opportunity at one of these industries, for example, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and so on. Any of the tech companies, either tech startups or like tech companies, like big tech companies. The third thing that could be done is also going into quantitative finance. So I do know that directly after undergrad, there are these firms like Graviton, Quadai, and so on, which directly hire you as a quantitative trader or a quantitative researcher. But after a point, there is a saturation in the level that you can be, or like the number of promotions that you get in a particular company, after which they typically expect you to have either a master's in finance or like a PhD in finance. So a PhD in machine learning also sets you up for those jobs because a lot of machine learning and fundamental work in there is also very mathematical. So like the research that I do, I also do end up doing a lot of math and like proving some results and so on. So like a PhD even in machine learning can give you opportunities to go into quantitative research in a lot of these hedge funds or investment banking or high frequency trading firms. That's the third opportunity. And the last, which is academia, where a lot of PhD students want to become professors or like faculty members in different universities. So people either typically directly apply for that after a PhD. So like in the last year, they apply for applications for a faculty member, or they continue doing a postdoc for like a few years, 1 or 2 years, and then apply for faculty positions. Um, yeah, these are typically the four routes after PhD. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. Now, I'm sure the audience has many questions as well, so I would like to invite the audience to ask questions.
Hello, Sharut. I wanted to ask, after undergraduate, how did you, decide about not opting for a master's or a pre-doctoral program and, straight away going to PhD, especially considering that it's kind of a long-term commitment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think during my undergrad, I had done a total of two research internships. Um, After which I felt like I did know what it feels like to do research. I just felt like more comfortable that like the software engineer. I did do an internship at Google as a software engineer too in my undergrad. So I did know that software engineering is something that I don't really enjoy, and I enjoy research a lot more. So I did know that in long run, I would definitely like to see myself doing research either in a tech company or in a research lab. But I felt like I wanted to give it a shot directly after my undergrad because I had enough experience. I also had some papers. So I just wanted to see that, what can I land with the profile that I already have. Probably if I did not land any of the schools, I would have done a pre-doc because I knew I wanted to do research in one form or the other. So that is one aspect. The other was definitely financial. I did not want to go for a very high cost master's degree in US where I have to take a lot of loan and then end up just like spend a few years just paying it off. So that was another factor because of which I decided to do a PhD and did not want to go for a master's. But the major one was given my experience that I had already done. I think I was okay. I did not think too much about the commitment. I was okay even spending like 4 years on it and just like give it a shot.
All right. Thank you so much. And one more thing I wanted to ask was, how much do you think the GPA affects the acceptance and the fact that your department was CS already and your interest field was also CS?
So my department was mathematics and computing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and my interest was machine learning, which is core to CS. And I had not done any machine learning course, which is also really funny. And my experience was completely in machine learning, but my coursework was not in machine learning. I did some online courses from which I learned about it. So definitely the department doesn't matter because I know some people from industrial engineering. So I have a friend at MIT who also did a PhD in machine learning. She was an undergrad at IIT Delhi in industrial engineering. And she spent 1 year at CMU being a research assistant after her undergrad to gain experience about how research happens and then applied for it. So it doesn't really matter which background you come from. Rather, the more diverse, the better. Universities prefer having that diversity in the background because it brings in new and fresher perspectives. That's about your second question. And back to the first question, I think GPA does matter to quite some extent. Um, for instance, at MIT, I think most people I know had a GPA above 9 who got in. I wouldn't say it matters too much, but there are definitely cutoffs that school have when they are admitting students. But that wouldn't be the first criteria that they look into. Like um, if you have a stellar, if you have stellar research experience and also some publications that are really impactful, then they might completely sideline your GPA and look at that first, than looking at your GPA. But that said, and again, like I know people who have gone to other top schools like University of California, Berkeley, like UCB, Stanford, and so on, even with GPAs like 8.5 or 8.7. I I don't know anyone who got in below that GPA. So I think even if you have less than 9, it might still work. But given if you have covered the bases in other aspects, for example, you have good research experience, you have good papers that can cover for the lower GPA as well.
All right, thanks.
Hi, sir. This is Rakesh Ranjan. Actually, I am a working professional and I have 15 years of experience. But lastly, I completed e-masters from IIT Kanpur and currently I am enrolled in MTech online. So I want to go for PhD, but how should I approach? So currently I'm living in New Jersey Edison, so Princeton is near me. So how should I approach for the admission process, or should I approach directly for the professor? Means how it will work?
So, uh, so there are, I think, a few ways. I think if you already know a professor who really likes your work and is interested to work with you, that really helps because then you can talk to the professor and then you can be like, I'll be applying for PhD this cycle and I really want to work with you. Would you be interested? Hop on a call with them before even applying. And that can be one way, you can improve your chances of acceptance. Apart from that, I think the standard procedure is just to apply through the standard protocol, which is like submit your SOP, submit your resume, your personal history statement, and your letters of recommendations when you apply to different schools. And I think some people have asked me this before as well, which is like, does it help to talk to professors before applying?
Yeah.
I think it can help too, but in the worst case, it can't do anything bad to you. So it I think it's a greater than equal to zero kind of thing. So at best, it can help you get in to a school, but in most cases, professors might just not reply to you or just say that
Yeah.
apply the academic route, which is like the standard route, which is submitting your application. So that can also happen, in which case it doesn't hurt you. But trying to reach out to professors and if they are interested and they can give you an opportunity, I think that can help.
So, what material should I prepare to go to professor first? Means instead of directly emailing him or her.
So typically you will have to email them first because they are really busy and you might not be able to find them in their office. So typically sending them an email that this is your background, this is my resume, I've attached it, and I'm really interested in the kind of work that you do and why you are interested in that, and if you can just get to meet with him or her or like them whenever you can. But like without emailing, I think it is going to be really hard for you to meet a professor.
Does it matter that I am not just undergraduate? I have experience and I am not that young to go for research or something.
I don't think it matters. I do know some people in their 30s when they started their PhD too. So I don't think it matters as much, but I think because you have 15 years after undergrad, they might also judge you on that experience, that what you have done in terms of research in that experience. Like if you haven't really done any research in those 15 years, that might be a bummer. Like they would want to see some more research experience because you have had that time.
But okay, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi Sharut, can you take us through like which are the currently the hot topics in AI, or which you would be currently working on, or like in your experience with Google or Meta, what are they currently focusing on, like, and what could pick up in the next 3 4 years?
Yeah, so I think the whole field of machine learning is moving exponentially fast right now. What is very popular this month will not even be popular like 2 months from now. That's like the pace that we are at. But I would say a lot of focus right now of all these companies is to build models that learn more continuously from the user experience. For example, when I'm sure you all have used ChatGPT or other models like Gemini, Claude, and so on. But when you're interacting with these models, you typically open a chat window, then you keep on asking questions, and the model responds to you. But when you open a new window, the model typically forgets what you had discussed in the previous window, or it doesn't learn from the things that from the feedback that you continuously give to the model. For example, if you ask the model to generate an image, but the image was not as aesthetic, then you might write to the model again, this is not as aesthetic. Can you improve this aspect of the image? So the model will, based on your instructions, it will do something for you and it might come up with the correct image. But the feedback that you gave it, which is this is not as aesthetic, that is not a feedback that the model uses to improve itself. So this can be really, really important when you are at an organizational level, and specifically for coding agents, for example, where if a if, for example, if an employee is interacting with a coding agent and they're trying to fix a bug in one place, and the coding agent does something, but the employee gives a feedback that this is not something you should do as it corrupts the whole code base. Now, the next day, if another employee is asking a similar question, the coding agent will start from scratch. It wouldn't know that, the previous day another employee asked me that question and I had to use that information. So a lot of research right now is being done on continual learning, as they say, like this is the official term, continual learning, which is make sure that these models continuously learn from the new data that is given to them. So that is, I think, the foremost thing, which is really interesting right now in AI and being really picked up. Um, and people are trying to really push the frontiers on that end. The other is safety and governance. I feel like the progress of these models is much faster than the guardrails that we have around them. That is, how do we use these models? How do we integrate these models to make decisions in our day-to-day lives? What are the impacts of having these models around us all the time? What's the best way to use them? So I would say not a lot of tech companies are focusing on that, but some are. For example, Anthropic is to some extent, and there are some professors who are solely working on this. So Yoshua Bengio, who's like a Turing Award winner in machine learning, in like artificial intelligence, he has this new company, Law Zero, where he's explicitly just working on making these models safe so that humans can use them. I think that's another very exciting direction in AI. Um, Apart from that, I think there is this third school which is more broad, and people don't really have an answer to this, but it is that AI has reached quite some limits, like some limits that we hadn't even imagined that the model would ever achieve in such small period of time. But the point is, how do we make it improve it? Like, how do we make it go beyond that ceiling? Should we just scale the model? When I say scale the model, I mean just train it on more data and train it with a bigger model. So when this whole back in like 2022, when GPT-2 was here, it had some million parameters. Then we went to billion parameters. Now we have some thousand trillion parameters. So the point is, like, how much do we keep scaling this model? Can we just increase the number of parameters and increase the data that it's trained on, and that is enough to actually get what we call artificial general intelligence, which is a model which is good at everything and is better than human. The other school of thought is we need more research, we need better algorithms. We can't just take the traditional algorithm that we are using right now, which is next token prediction, and just scale up everything. Maybe we need something more clever, and we need to come up with a better algorithm along with scaling that can actually get us to AGI or artificial general intelligence. So I think this is a very broad question that a lot of people are still thinking about, and there is no and it's a point of contention. Like, there is no settlement on which path will take us to that endpoint. So I think that is also another topic that a lot of these companies are working on, PhD students are working on, which is trying to understand how much you can scale and what might be alternative ways you can improve these models. Another topic that is really interesting and again picked up very, very hot at the moment is self improving models. So, typically, when we train these models or improve these models, we give them feedback from humans, either in the form of data or in the form of some rewards or signals. For some of you here who know about reinforcement learning, that is another way that we improve the models when it comes to a downstream task. But this year, I think a lot of the community is focusing on something that we call self-improving models, which is if you just take a model, it has its own generations. Can you give the model using that generation some signal or use that output of the model in some way so that the model can continuously keep on improving itself. So just based on the output and just based on, say, another model's output, you can give the model some feedback where it knows it can continuously improve it. So this is based on the hypothesis that the models already have a lot of information, but they just don't know how to extract that information from their weights. So there is a lot of scope for the models to improve them, and self-improvement is taking you there. Yeah, so these are like the four topics that come to my head, which I think a lot of people, both at industry and academic institutions, are focusing on for this year, and will probably be very relevant in the next few years too.
Hi, Sharut, a slightly specific question. I wanted to know what sort of expectations are, generally there with respect to coding expertise, because uh, there are these models, and I have had some research experience myself. And the thing is, if I focus on trying to code it because I want to, get to learn coding, then I'll just end up spending way too much time than what is expected. So then, as a result, I'm having to depend on agents. But then, in a PhD, is there is there any sort of expectation as to the level of coding expertise a applicant should have?
Oh, not at all. Like, I've had friends at MIT who were doing PhD in machine learning, and they come from a pure math background, and they didn't even know to, like, they hadn't written a single, even a hello world code in Python. So there's no coding expertise, but that's something that, depending on what you want to do in your PhD, you might have to learn. Like, if you want to do more math and theory, then that's something that you don't really care about much. But if you want to train these models, do research, and also do experimental work, that, if you develop this algorithm and then test it out, then this is how it happens. So in that case, you do need some empirical skills too. But clearly, the models are getting way too good at it already. So you don't have to like demonstrate your skills anywhere. If you know how to use these models to help you code what you want to code, I think that's enough.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, Sharut. This is Ran. I'm an undergraduate currently, and like I had two questions for you. Firstly, what is actually the procedure to apply and like domains to consider before that for the research interns outside India? As you said, you have also discovered your cinema like gradually, and I have also like explored that recently. I actually have a keen interest in that. So what is actually the procedure to apply? Because I think applying for an admission as a school and for an intern is like totally two different things, I guess. And second question is as you said, your course didn't actually align with your interest. Like you were in MLC and you had interest in ML. So how did you actually study for it, and like what were the resources you referred to, or was it totally through your projects only, like you got the like experience or something?
Yeah, so that's a great question. For the first question about like research experiences which are not for PhD, just like doing like research internships. So I think the factor varies a lot if you are a PhD student versus if you are an undergrad. And I'm guessing you are asking, as an undergrad, like what's the approach you should take?
Yes, I'm an undergrad.
Yeah. So I think the best approach there is just emailing. So in my second year, when I also went for an internship, so I think there are a few ways to do that, but I would like what I did in my first year, like in my second year, the first time I went for an internship, I wouldn't recommend a lot of people doing that. That is called cold emailing. So, what students typically do is like using some softwares or Chrome extensions. You can email, or using even BCC, you can email like 200 or 1,000 professors at the same time, writing the same generic email. So I did it for a few months. I sent some 500 emails to a lot of faculty members, and nobody, like not even like two or three people responded to me. And that's because the email was very, very generic, and it didn't even have the name of the professor or not even any details about why I'm interested to work with them. So what I did eventually was draft an email to the people that I found interesting and I would like to work with them, but more personalized. I would say specifically, this is the reason I would like to work with you. And this is the time.
Can you please mute yourself?
Yeah, so writing like very personalized email definitely helps, and that's how I landed the first internship experience that I had in India. The second time when I went to the Harvard University and the collaboration with MIT, I think I was just like lucky to be there because the people who I worked with eventually, they were looking for interns, and they went through a few IITs and they circulated this opportunity to the training and placement cell. So when I was an undergrad, the training and placement cell of IIT, it gave us the notification that this Harvard University, these few faculty members, they are looking for this opportunity, and if students are interested. But that was not a summer opportunity; it was a semester exchange semester like internship opportunity. So I basically spent like 5 months in Boston doing that internship and not doing any course at IIT Delhi. So that was like a very different opportunity than like a standard summer internship. So I think lucky to know about that opportunity, but because it came through my training and placement cell back at undergrad. But I know people who did this too without having such an opportunity, which is just like emailing professors again and being like, I'm an undergrad. I have some time apart from the coursework that I'm already doing. So if we can, start working the semester, and then over the summer I can come in person and continue the opportunity. So I think that's another way. But I think email is the gold standard to apply for research internships.
Okay, like how did you like actually select those people? Like, कि हाँ मेरे को लोगों के साथ काम करना रहेगा तो अच्छा.
Yeah, so you typically just like go and see unki profile and just like look at what they're working on, if it's interesting to you. So for example, I just checked a few schools that I was really interested in, like some of the top schools, looked at the faculty pages. Say I had some experience in machine learning and I wanted to try machine learning more. If there are like 20 faculty members, I just saw that if someone is a bit older, they might not hire interns as much compared to someone who's a bit younger, because they're looking for like more people who can help publish more papers and so on. So someone in their early career is usually helpful when you want to start with such opportunities, rather than someone who's like more experienced and older. So that was another factor, but majorly like just scanning through schools and just finding people in the same area that I'm working on. Yeah. And for your second question, which is my coursework was different than what I was applying for. So I think machine learning back then was a very not that hot of a topic, but I just came to know about it from a friend and I really wanted to learn it. Clearly, there are these cross department electives that you can take, and I'm sure there are some at IIT Kanpur too. So I think the easiest way to learn about a topic that your department doesn't specialize in is just to take a course. For me, that would have been taking a machine learning course in the CS department, but because of the prerequisites that the courses had, the earliest I can do that, I could have done that was in my third year, and I did not want to wait that long. So I started this project with a professor, and the professor told me that, there is this online course by Stanford, go and do that for a month. So I spent a December of my first year, I think December of my second year, just doing that course online. So I spent like 1 month doing it, and then the professor was like, okay, now, you know about this topic. How about we start the project now? So some professors will just like give you the information about what topics can you read about and what materials you can read about before even starting the project. So that's another way. But I think I have never seen it being a problem in terms of people learning new topics, because typically now with these models you can even use these models to learn about new topics, at least at some level, not at the deepest level, but at least some introduction level. And there are online courses that you can take as well if you're really interested to pursue something. But I would definitely say talk to a professor that you're really interested to work with, and they might ask you to do some relevant coursework. If you land a foreign research opportunity, it might start like next year or next summer. Then you have the time in that duration to actually brush up on those topics. And yeah, just be well prepared before you start that opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I would like to thank the audience for their great questions. And also, Sharut, thank you for your wonderful insights. So today's discussion gave us a very clear picture of like what pursuing research abroad looks like. So this discussion was quite useful for the audience as well. And on the behalf of everyone, I would like to sincerely thank you for the time you gave us to share your journey. So thanks.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was a lot of fun interacting with you all. Yeah.
Thanks, Sharut.